You're listening to the PensNation radio show on thepensnation.com. Follow us on Twitter at thepensnation.
It's the PensNation radio show on thepensnation.com. I'm Nick, joined tonight by two-thirds of the three amigos, Andy Coco Loco Hughes and Ken
Hola.
El Guapo Will.
That's three, Nick. That's you, me, and Andy.
But I'm joined tonight by two-thirds, not three-thirds.
It's dose.
You two are joining me.
By all things together, though, we make three.
Oh, yeah. That's a
We're
whole.
one whole.
We're whole.
Place.
We're like Captain Planet and the Planeteers.
We're whole, and together we're all a-holes. So it all works out.
Nice.
You can follow us on the
That's
PensNation
wonderful.
on the Twitter at the PensNation. You can follow us also individually if you'd like to follow us individually at PensNation_Nick, at PensNation_Andy, and you guessed it, almost, PensNation_K. Yeah, I faked them all out. You're saving the world two characters at a time, Ken.
I did. I heart media.
Oh, yeah.
I reminded
That's
you.
at the end, Ken.
Now I'm going to remind you throughout the show.
Just randomly say
thanks.
iHeartMedia throughout the show.
We're forever indebted to iHeartRadio and iHeartMedia. Now that we're on iHeartRadio, you can follow us there or search keyword PensNation to find all of our shows and stuff there. You can also find us on iTunes for free, so be sure to subscribe there as well. This has been a very interesting start to our shows, guys.
No, I'm just so thrilled by that idea that I can get on iHeartRadio on my app and see our little penguin guy sitting there,
cool.
like next to WDVE and the X and all that kind of stuff.
Hey, he's such a little star now.
He is, and he doesn't even have a name.
No,
We shouldn't name him.
we should have our listeners name him. Or not. But I think it would be kind of cool. Like the Pens blog, they had Dickie for a while. I thought that was awesome. Dickie
Yeah, it was.
Roberts.
Pretty cool.
I miss Dickie
And
Roberts.
I think that's kind of why I don't want to name it, because they had their thing and they did it and it was awesome. And
But
I
every
don't-
mascot, though, has a name.
yeah, well, sort of. I mean, look at the Sochi mascots. They probably had names, but nobody knew them.
No.
So if a tree falls in the woods and it doesn't get a name, then does it make a sound?
Yeah, I mean, if a tree falls in the woods in Toronto, it would probably throw its jersey on the ice.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
we'll go with that then.
Yeah. I don't know really how to segue into this whole Toronto Maple Leafs talk, but that's one way I'm sure we can do it.
Hashtag TML talk.
TML talk.
Yeah, man.
Too much losing.
First of all, I love everything about Toronto.
Do you?
I do. This is the culture of sports and fandom and a lot of other things. Even the political climate there just fascinates me. And I guess it's sort of, I don't have to deal with the consequences of it necessarily.
Yeah, because I don't think you would like it as much. Just kind of
Probably
knowing
not.
you and how you react to this fan base sometimes. I don't know
true.
if you would survive in Toronto. I think your head would explode.
No, yeah, that's probably true.
Yeah, it's probably 10 times worse there.
It's
is here.
unbelievable. And that's the Pens' next opponent, so we see them Wednesday night, so that'll be a lot of fun. And they
Yeah.
gave us a pretty good battle last time, so pretty much expecting the same thing. We always seem to get other teams' best effort, so whether it be Toronto,
Well-
who's not very great this season, or Edmonton, or whoever, they always seem to rise up to that occasion and play us pretty tough, don't they?
Well, you saw it against the Islanders. They act when a team beats the Penguins, they react to the game like they just won the Stanley Cup. Like
Yeah.
we are that team for every frickin' team we play on this schedule. So as a fan, it does kind of make it irritating to swallow sometimes, especially when you're on the road and that happens and you see it. But you just I don't know, whatever.
Just gotta shake it off, Ken.
Shake it off. Shake it
It's
off.
one of those things that I don't know if this fan base for the Penguins actually grasps that concept enough. Like,
No.
teams do get up for this team, and whenever they do beat us, that is like, if the Sabres, God forbid, if the Sabres beat us, that's like their Stanley Cup. Because they're not going to sniff it. They're not even coming close to that. So this is all they got to hold on to.
The Sabres are so bad right now.
They're so bad.
But their fan base is on board with how bad they are because they understand what the payoff is to the point where when they win a game now, their fans are pissed. Like they actually are pissed that they gained a point in the standings and possibly jeopardized the lottery in June.
But it's really not, because they're going to be in that lottery in June, and they're going to have a pretty darn good chance of winning it. So if they don't and Edmonton wins it, throw it all over Boston. Yeah, but yeah, like I was saying, I don't think the fan base understands that teams really get up for us, and whenever they win, that's their bragging rights for most of the year. So I mean, it is annoying to see, but whatever. Just you almost have to just forget about it and just move on. But sometimes that's hard to do.
It is. It's kind of good and bad. You're happy that your team has put yourself in a position where you make other teams feel good if they beat you, but at the same time, if you're playing a team like the Sabres, sometimes it's hard to get motivated for those games. But I don't really see the Penguins. They're a little different this year. They seem to be a little better with that in terms of playing, up to the competition or down to the competition, whatever you may call it. They've had issues with that in the past. They seem to be a little bit better with that this year, which has been encouraging.
But we talked about it with the OE last week, is the fact that I think what it is really is that the Penguins now have more than one way to win. And that is the most refreshing thing for me to see. Now, would it be nice to have taken one of those two games against the Islanders, especially in that type of environment for both those games? Sure. But, let's keep this whole thing in perspective.
Yeah. Okay, this might alienate me with a lot of the fan base, but I was kind of glad to see them stumble.
Nick sucks!
Yeah. Bring me the hate mail. But I was really glad to see them stumble against a team like the Islanders because, first of all, the Islanders are a much better team than people give them credit for. They're actually a real deal team right now, and a couple moves away from being a really legit contender in the East. But we haven't really had a lot of long stretches to see this team kind of suffer through some growing pains, some I don't know, just some stressful situations, some tenuous situations, and we're starting to see it a little bit. They bounced back pretty well against the Bruins, but seeing them lose 2 against the Islanders early on still in the season, I think, it gives them time to get their heads right later on. Because, hey, let's say these guys match up in the second round of the playoffs. You're not going to take them for granted now because you know that they could beat you pretty soundly.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a good thing for the team, the coaching staff. They're getting a chance to kind of go through all of their plans, and Johnson obviously has different strategies up his sleeve for different opponents. But I think that's good because the last few years we've seen the Penguins kind of dominate towards the beginning of the season, and then they stumble a little bit, and they're like, oh crap, what do we do now against this team? So now they kind of have a chance to kind of reevaluate things and try different things. And we've seen different line combos. We've seen Crosby play with a bunch of different guys, Malkin playing with different guys, Sutter playing with different guys. And some of that's because of injuries. But, Kunitz was taken off the top line. Hornqvist was put back onto that Crosby line. So it's good to see that they're kind of mixing things up a little bit, giving them different looks. I think that's going to help them in games like that against opponents like the Islanders.
I think it's brilliant that in those 2 games, Mike Johnson didn't even give him a peek at the power play.
Yeah.
God damn it, guys.
That was hard. I mean, it was so frustrating to watch as a Pens fan because, okay, there's stuff going on the ice, and you're not getting any calls.
Don't go down that road, please.
No, you know it.
But to sit here and say that the Penguins were getting the shaft on calls in that game is such a Pittsburgh Steelers thing to do.
I understand that, but you can't tell me the human element of refereeing doesn't come into play at all. Whenever Crosby's slamming his stick off of the freaking boards, complaining and jawing at the ref.
No.
Oh,
like I could see it coming into effect that game. And maybe an official being a little bit pissed off And yes, like you said, the human factor, the emotions becoming a part of it. But for the fact that the Penguins fans think for the last 5 games there's been a conspiracy against, but that's what's being said. No, and we're talking about the 2 games against the Islanders this weekend specifically. Like that's what people really thought. Why the Penguins weren't getting any opportunities on the man advantage.
No, I'm talking about those 2 games specifically. I mean, right after he does that, you know how tight the referee kind of union is, how they're drinking between periods and having fun with each other. I
make it sound like they're
I don't believe it. Maybe
not
that there's anything wrong with that if it's consensual, but I wouldn't put it past it. I don't like to be a conspiracy theorist per se, but it's just hard to sometimes swallow those pills whenever Malkin's getting run and nothing's called and the ref is right there.
It was behind the play though. That's what I look and see. Like if an official saw that, that's getting called. Without a doubt. Now, what I don't get is why it seemed to get absolutely no look from the league office.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure they took a look at the play and they rolled whatever, but I don't know. The intent seemed like it was there. And yeah, that one didn't sit too well with me. But aside from that, I thought the 2 games were really well officiated. And as a result of that, I thought we saw 2 really entertaining hockey games where the teams were let to play and solve things on their own. And I don't think that there were necessarily a ton of liberties being taken on either side where it was giving one team an unfair advantage or giving the players who don't have skill a leg up on people who do.
Yeah. Are you guys at all worried about anything that you saw from those 2 games against the Islanders?
I think, the Islanders games, the penalties, I think, was the big thing. And, Steve Downey in particular is obviously getting a lot discussion about him. But, I mean, I think the penalties was definitely an issue in those 2 Islanders games. You can't be in the box that much. That's a dangerous team. And, you said, Nick, they are for real. That was definitely one thing I took away from that one, but I guess that happens, and that's something that can be addressed. They did a much better job against Boston, but they can't go to the box like that as much as they did against the Islanders. But it's tough to do sometimes. I mean, I know it's an emotional game, and it's a kind of a rivalry now with that team, but that was one thing that they'll need to improve on if they want to continue to beat these teams.
There's something in particular that worried me. And with the Steve Downey, I mean, we knew that there are going to be times that Steve Downey takes unnecessary penalties, and that's going to happen from time to time. That one necessarily, I don't know. It was a pretty quick, spur of the moment penalty. I mean, despite my rant that I just went on, there could have been a penalty called on him right before that. And he was frustrated about that, and he let his frustrations get a hold of him. Look, if that's what we deal with Steve Downey, 1 out of 20 games, which is about the rate that it's been so far this year, then what are we bitching about?
Yeah, honestly, though.
I read articles and columns for the last 2 days and blog posts and about Steve Downey and how out of control he is and how he needs to reel it in. Calm down, bud. Relax.
Deep breath.
When all is said and done, this team's still like 14-4-2 or something ridiculous. I mean, they're still a really good team, and I think fans just kind of get a little over emotional whenever they lose 2 games. We're 13-2-1.
14-4-2.
We're 14-4-2, but we were 13-2-1.
Oh yes, but at one point, Nick, we were 1-0.
Oh.
If this is the historical podcast,
forever unclean. No.
Yeah, and then we let it all get away from us. The undefeated season down the drain.
Stop making plans for that parade.
God.
Hey, you guys, Andy, you and I talked about this earlier today. Speaking of parades, the Islanders not the Islanders, the other team that was good in the 80s, the Oilers. Yeah, they kind of had a parade last week. Ken, this, I believe, is your first time hearing this. So
yeah, you got to hear this.
Let's get your reaction to the Edmonton Oilers Walk of Shame. This is following a 7-1 loss to the Blackhawks the other night.